Hey, it's Aaliyah Nye. This is Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR.
It's the fastest, most unpredictable speedway on Earth.
Iron made this place. Mined, smelted, forged. And every spring, we gather round and celebrate. Iron sharpening iron.
Oh, he gets tattooed!
But in order to take it all home, you need nerves of steel. The big one is back. Get your tickets now at TalladegaSuperspeedway.com.
Roll Tide and welcome to this Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. Roger Hoover, great to be with you from our studios in Tuscaloosa for a very exciting show as we look at Alabama basketball, baseball, women's basketball as well. It's all happening coming up here on the show today, and we'll take a look at what's coming up on the show thanks to our friends RJ Young. They also sponsor our headlines. RJ Young is the official technology and solutions provider of Crimson Drive. They've given us this smart board to go through everything very interactively all throughout our headlines for today. We'll start our conversation with Richard Hendrix. That'll start our show, Hoops with Hendrix, former Alabama basketball player and now SEC Network analyst. He'll break down Alabama against BYU coming up tonight in the Sweet 16, plus give you his thoughts on Alabama women's basketball and their run to the round of 32. Then we'll talk baseball with Will Plattner, Crimson Tide catcher, who has been red hot at the plate for the Crimson Tide and has emerged as a starting catcher, even though he didn't start the year as a starting catcher, didn't even play last season for the Crimson Tide. Despite being on the roster, we talk about his transition to Alabama from Ole Miss coming up in our one-on-one conversation. Then we'll have Coach's Checklist from women's basketball from a very emotional press conference on Monday night with Alabama falling to Maryland in the round of 32 in the women's NCAA tournament. More on that coming up in a moment, but right now, men's basketball, the Crimson Tide tonight in the Sweet 16 in beautiful Newark, New Jersey. We're getting set for a 5 p.m. airtime between Alabama and BYU. Crimson Tide with Nate Oates in the Sweet 16 for the third straight year and now trying to go back to the Final Four for back-to-back years. Incredible that Alabama is only 2 wins away from doing so. Duke or Arizona wait on the other side of the bracket coming up for a potential Elite 8 matchup. But tonight, it's all about Alabama and BYU, and we'll have full radio coverage available again starting at 5 o'clock for that tip-off just after 6 p.m. Central from Newark, New Jersey. Crimson Tide baseball team. Alabama was home last week, and they get to stay at home this week. Picked up a win on Thursday night against number 1 Tennessee. Did drop the final 2 games of that series against the Vols. But then on Tuesday, the Crimson Tide really bounced back, had a walk-off 4-3 winner against North Alabama. Played at the home of the Rocket City Trash Pandas in Madison, Alabama. Justin LeBron, the walk-off RBI base hit for the Crimson Tide to deliver the win in the bottom of the ninth. Now this weekend, a top 15 matchup, Alabama against Oklahoma. The Sooners and the Crimson Tide both off to a great start, 4-2 in SEC play. Alabama sweeping Texas A&M, going 1-2 against Tennessee. Meanwhile, for Oklahoma, they've taken 2 out of 3, both on the road against South Carolina and at home against Mississippi State. Tremendous series coming up. We'll have full radio coverage available coming up all throughout the weekend. Crimson Tide softball team. Last week went 1-2 on the road against 5th-ranked Texas A&M, and then last night trailed going to the top of the 7th, but rallied to beat North Alabama 4-2 in Florence. With that win, Patrick Murphy 1,300 in his Alabama tenure, 1,300 wins for Coach Murph. Congratulations to him on that milestone. Now this week, it's Crimson Tide also home coming up against Georgia, and don't forget on Friday we'll have our next weekend warm-up edition at Baumhauer's. Great lunch with the Crimson Tide players, very interactive with Coach Murphy and the players, a really fun atmosphere. More information on that on rolltide.com. Final notes around Alabama athletics. As I mentioned, the women's basketball team, absolute heartbreaker, falling to Maryland in the round of 32. Sarah Ashley Barker, a school record 45 points in that game for Alabama, most scored by an SEC women's basketball player ever in an NCAA tournament game. You think of all the great teams and players we've had in the SEC throughout the years. Recently it was South Carolina, LSU, even going back to Tennessee. Nobody has done what Sarah Ashley Barker did on Monday night with 45 points, and especially, as Richard Hendrix will talk about in a moment, hitting those 3 consecutive free throws with barely any time on the clock to force the game into a second overtime. One of the more remarkable things we've seen in Alabama athletics in recent years. Great news for gymnastics. They're hosting the NCAA Tuscaloosa Regional after a pretty good showing at the SEC Championships, and that'll be coming up a week from this weekend. It'll be April 3rd through the 6th coming up at Coleman Coliseum. Roll Tide to Coach Johnston and the Crimson Tide gymnastics team. But of course, right now our focus is on basketball. basketball. It's on Nate Oates and the Crimson Tide in the Sweet 16 tonight against BYU, and then hopefully coming up on Saturday in the Elite Eight. Richard Hendrix joins us once again to give us a breakdown on Alabama in the Big Dance in our weekly Hoops with Hendrix series during March Madness.
Sure enjoyed Alabama's first 2 wins in the men's tournament and what we saw from the women's team over the weekend.
Yeah, it's been a joy to watch some high-level basketball from Alabama. You know, the men getting it done. On to the Sweet 16 once again, the 4th time in 5th season in 5 years. So it's a phenomenal run that Nate Oates has this team on, and they look poised to continue their path to another Final Four. And the women's side, listen, hats off to Christy Curry and that squad. I mean, they were absolutely a joy to watch. They fought to the last end against that game against Maryland, and Sarah Ashley Barker with an epic performance. That was one for the memory books for sure.
It really was, and we'll start with the women's basketball team. I got the round 1 victory against Green Bay on Saturday, and then that game on Monday against Maryland, as you mentioned, it was a thriller going down to the wire, not just in regulation, first overtime, second overtime as well. If you can, put in perspective what Sarah Ashley Barker did with a school record 45 points and then hitting those 3 free throws when she had to send the game to second overtime.
Well, she had us all on the edge of our seats watching that game. That was the performance that you want to see of a player who clearly loves her school, loves her team, and wants to go down fighting to the last moment. I mean, playing and staying in that game and with an opportunity to win in regulation was so thrilling. But then the battle with the foul outs of the game of Zay Green and Aaliyah Nye, for her to put the team on her back and everyone else to pick up their level of play to push that game to double overtime. 3 clutch free throws with, I believe, 0.7 to go on the clock. I mean, that is just unbelievable focus, and for her to be able to knock those down after being 50% from the free throw line in the game. Clutch moments. I mean, memorable moments. I mean, to me, she's definitely etched herself as one of the top players ever in the history of the program that I've been able to see. But that was a performance from that team and from that staff that I think we'll never forget. I mean, you want to move on to the Sweet 16, but they left it all out there on the court.
They certainly did. Again, a great performance by Alabama throughout this season. It's going to be really tough to say goodbye to this senior class. So when you look at Zay Green, Sarah Ashley Barker, as well as Aaliyah Nye, and just from your perspective, seeing how Christy Curry has elevated this program. It used to be just happy to get to the win NCAA tournament, happy to be in the upper half of the SEC. But do you like the fact that the expectation level has now changed for this fan base with this program?
Oh, I love it. I love it because, you know, I was at school at a time when Alabama women's basketball, they gave a strong effort, but did not obviously have the results that they would like to have. And it's taken some time for Christy Curry to get this program to where it's at a high level nationally. But the ascent to this level has been a lot of fun to watch. You know, ever since I've retired and been back on the call for a lot of the women's games, it's been so much fun to watch the names of the players grow in their positions on the team. You talk about Brittany Davis and Megan Abrams and Hannah Barber with that first crew when I started calling the games, and then with Aaliyah Nye and Sarah Ashley Barker coming over in a role player position and then elevate themselves into stars. And then you add Zay Green and Essence Cody into it, and they have a bona fide team that's a really good team in the SEC and nationally respected. I think people have to remember Christy Curry has been to a national championship game. She's done it before. She's a proven coach, and she's proven it once again with this team. And it's not just about getting the wins. They do it the right way. They have a style that is fun to watch. It's creative from an offensive and defensive standpoint and aesthetically pleasing. So they've done a phenomenal job. And for me, who's been an Alabama women's basketball supporter for a long time, I think that it's a joy to watch where they are right now, and I think they can go to the next level.
Yeah, heartbreaking end on Monday to the season for Alabama women's basketball, but Richard, the season not over yet for men's basketball. We don't know what the final chapter will look like for this year's version of the Crimson Tide. What'd you like about the round 1 win against Robert Morris and then what we saw on Sunday against St. Mary's?
Well, the grit that they had. I mean, obviously, when you're a 2 seed, you're going to get everybody's best punch. And in the first game, obviously, against Robert Morris, it had some challenges. We were able to pick it up. The interior play, I think, is going to be important for Alabama moving forward. Clifford Amori has been utilized well in those screen roll actions, utilizing them with the pick and roll and alley-oop threats up top. And Grant Nelson having the toughness to come out in the second half to get it done in that opening game and then playing really good basketball in the second round against St. Mary's, it shows that this team seems to be focused. If they can hit shots from the outside like they did last game, Chris Youngblood, Holloway, Mark Sears starting to get back into it, then this is a team that I believe can beat anyone in the tournament. But you have to be able to guard for 40 minutes. You have to take every single possession as is his last, because this is the type of mental focus that you had to have in tournament play. It's win or go home, and you have to be locked in. And that's not just from the players, that's from the coaching staff as well. Everyone has to be locked in for the entire game to make any adjustment that's needed to be in a do or die situation. And they've shown that so far in the first two games.
How important was it to get Grant Nelson back on the floor for those critical minutes against Robert Morris at a time when Alabama was either tied or trailing in that ball game? But did that help him too for the St. Mary's game, just knocking off the rust in that first game?
I think it's huge. For me, I think he's the key to this team getting it done. I mean, we've seen in his career at Alabama that when he plays big in big games and Alabama comes up with big-time wins, when you get to the Sweet 16, there are only quality teams left. And you have to have a player who can make a difference on both ends of the court. He has the ability to switch defensively on the perimeter and slide his feet. He can rim protect. He can be a matchup problem in the low post with a smaller defender on him. And if he's knocking down threes from the outside, that opens up things for this offense to really flourish, because he's not really respected from the three-point line. So it's a bonus when you can get those shots to fall, and it opens things up for him where he can get into his drive game and finish at the rim in transition. So it's not just what he can do. It's what can Alabama produce from that power forward position. It's Grant Nelson, it's Jaron Stevenson, it's Mo Diabate. Those three guys bringing their A game on both ends of the court will be huge for Alabama if they're going to get back to the Final Four and beyond.
It's got to start with the Sweet 16 coming up on Thursday night in Newark, Alabama against BYU. What have you learned so far about this Cougar basketball team?
Well, the team's got really good shooters. Richie Saunders can shoot it quickly. He comes down in transition, similar to like Alabama does. He can get it up and get it up quickly with a high efficiency. So I think this is a game that plays into the hands of what Alabama likes to play. Teams that go up-tempo like to shoot it early in the shot clock, play at a pace that Alabama wants to play and score a lot of points. When they play against the teams that can slow down the tempo, that's been the recipe that give Alabama some problems. I don't know if BYU can implement that type of game plan because they like to score and shoot and get up and down. So this might be a matchup that plays into the favor of Alabama. But at the same time, you can never underestimate any opponent. You never look ahead. You always play the man in front of you for every single play and every possession. And that's the attitude that Alabama has to have in this game, to dominate every single possession and expect it to be a long game that you have to earn the win.
Again, the Crimson Tide players, coaching staff focused on the game right in front of them. For fans, they may be thinking ahead just a little bit towards Saturday and a possible Elite Eight matchup with either the Arizona Wildcats or the Duke Blue Devils, Duke being the number one seed. We've talked before, Richard, about Alabama's defense so far this year. How would you see a potential matchup, again, potential, if Alabama has to go up against Duke and Cooper Flag?
Well, potentially, I do think that Alabama is matched well against them. I mean, you have positional size all around, and this is a team that has great defensive positional size in Duke with Mala Watch down low at 7-footer who can protect the rim, Cooper Flag at 6'9", 6'10", who's agile all around the court, and they're well coached with John Shire. So this is a team that has a complete team. They can play multiple styles. They can outscore you. They can also grind it out and beat you with their defensive abilities. But Alabama has the personnel and the experience, I think, to match well against Duke. You also have to look at the Final Four as a game, or the Elite Eight game is a game within the game. It's a goal within the goal. You have one day to prepare on a short turnaround where you did not know who your opponent is until you saw who won their Sweet 16 game. So having a style in which that you know that you're going to play and be comfortable is something that I believe can benefit Alabama. They're going to get out and run. They're going to play a tough defense if they can, and they're going to try to score quickly in the shot clock and outscore you. So getting the rhythm after a Sweet 16 game in the same venue can hopefully and potentially give them momentum against whoever their opponent is, may it be Arizona or Duke, to move forward and to get to another Final Four. But listen, never overlook the components you have. BYU is first. Don't overlook them. And Arizona may get the upset on the other side against Duke.
They certainly might. 7 SEC teams making it to the Sweet 16. Any surprise for you with that? Any great storylines you feel like from the rest of the conference through the first 2 rounds?
The Arkansas Razorbacks. I mean, Coach John Calipari has done a phenomenal job of rallying the troops. This is a team that I had early in the season when they were 0-5, and I thought they were dead. I mean, it was just no life in that gym in Bud Walton. The players seem to be a little bit disconnected, not understanding their role, but somehow, some way, they have figured it out. They're not really good at shooting team, but athletically, they can step toe-to-toe with anyone in the conference. And they've been able to have the matchups that they needed in the first and second rounds. And that's big-time matchups. Arkansas beat Kansas in the opener with Bill Self, Hall of Fame coach, and then you bounce back and beat the 2 seed in St. John's and Rick Pitino. So they're starting to have some momentum, and confidence is the most important thing that you need at this point of the year. You're not going to have a lot of time to gain it through practice. You're just doing a lot of shoot-arounds and going over the film and the matchups and what every team is going to do as far as adjustments on the court. So the big thing that you want to have is how confident are you going into the matchup that you're going to have, and hopefully that can give you some life when you're playing tough. And Arkansas has been the team in the SEC that seems to be the most confident at the moment.
They certainly do, and getting ready for an all-SEC matchup as well in the Sweet 16. What do you make of Tennessee against Kentucky? The Wildcats defeated the Vols twice in the regular season, and it's the old cliche, can't beat a team 3 times in the year. A lot of times we don't see it play out in the NCAA tournament like this, but a huge rivalry matchup between the Vols and the Cats.
Listen, it doesn't get any better than that. You get a chance to play big rivalry game between those 2 schools, and you're playing to go to the Elite 8. And Tennessee has lost 2 times. I mean, I do think that you would think the psychological advantage is going to be with the Volunteers. You can't let a team beat you 3 times. But Kentucky, when they're able to move the ball around offensively and spread you out, that is the key to make them use that offense against Tennessee's pressure defense. Tennessee is going to do a great job of trying to limit your possessions, slowing down the tempos. Zakai Ziegler does a great job of running the show. They can squeeze you defensively. But when Kentucky's hitting shots, and if they've been hitting them like they'd hit in the last 2 outings against Tennessee, then listen, the Wildcats can get it done for the 3rd time. But that's going to be a matchup that I believe both teams will have to be dialed in. Kentucky can't view it as the time to play them for the 3rd time. You have to view it as this is the time we're going to play them for the 1st time to go to the Elite 8. And this time it's for all the marbles.
Then rounding out our SEC discussion, any concern through the first 2 rounds for Auburn or Florida or the path they have ahead towards the Final Four?
Well, both of those teams being number 1 seeds, when I looked at the draw in the bracket, I didn't particularly think that they had an easy march to the Final Four. Florida, the team that everyone is picking to win the national championship and has been playing really well throughout the SEC tournament and quite frankly all season, I think they had a tough draw. I think even in the first round against Norfolk State, last round against the defending 2-time national champions, UConn, they had to earn it. It took Walter Clayton Jr. to hit some big shots down the stretch to be able to come up with the win. And it's not going to get any easier for them. They move forward in this tournament. Auburn, on the flip side, I think has been limping a little bit coming down the stretch. They lost 3 out of the last 4 after wrapping up the SEC regular season. Janai Broome has been dominant all season long, but in the last game against a really good big against Ryan Kalkbrenner at Creighton, he was able to guard him one-on-one. And when you're able to guard him one-on-one and limit your rotations and not have the double team to come over, which allows Auburn to get easy looks from the outside, then it makes them a little bit easier and a little bit more of a beatable team. I think they'll have that same challenge against Michigan in the next round. Vlad Golden, another 7-footer, transferred over from FAU, will be a big-time defender and a big body that can lean on Broome, as well as Danny Wolf, who's a 7-foot guard. I mean, so Michigan has the physicality to match with Auburn. It's just going to be a matter if Auburn's guards can carry them. I think Chad Baker-Mazara, Kelly, the Miles Kelly, they're tremendous, and Todd Pettiford are really good guards, but they're going to have to really carry the show on this one because I think the big men are going to be something that can potentially neutralize Broome and his impact from being so dominant.
It'll be fun to see how many teams make it to the Final Four. We certainly hope the Crimson Tide part of the mix. And Richard Hendrix, you're the most popular podcast guest in all of college basketball right now. We hope to have you back on the show next week if Alabama makes it to the Final Four. But thank you for the time you've given us once again here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Roll Tide, sir.
Thank you so much. Enjoyed it. Roll Tide.
Alabama racing is back. Don't miss the opportunity to experience the NASCAR Cup Series at Talladega. Witness the return of racing on April 27th and be a part of NASCAR's biggest and baddest track. From the blistering speed on the track to the unparalleled fan access of the Talladega Garage Experience, there's something for everyone to enjoy. Tickets are on sale now. Secure your seats today at TalladegaSuperspeedway.com. Always fun to catch up with Richard Hendrix, get his thoughts on Alabama basketball. And again, we hope the Crimson Tide advance to the Final Four. I promise we will have Richard Hendrix again next week on Crimson Drive to preview the Final Four if Alabama can pick up 2 wins this weekend in New Jersey. We're hoping for 3 wins this weekend coming up here in Sweet Home Alabama as Alabama baseball gets ready to host the Oklahoma Sooners, and somebody that's really been one of the heartbeats of this team all throughout the great starts of the year for Rob Vaughn has been the play of catcher Will Plattner. He's emerged as a starter as the season has gone along. He has also been somebody that started his career at Ole Miss, didn't even play for the Crimson Tide last season despite being on this roster, but now he is again the everyday catcher for this group in 2025. He joins us from our podcast studio to talk everything about his journey from Illinois to Alabama. Welcome back to Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. Roger Hoover back with you from Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium inside the Advantage Center at our podcast studio. Talking baseball with Alabama catcher Will Plattner as we get ready for the Crimson Tide and the Oklahoma Sooners this weekend. And Will, first of all, Roll Tide, how are you enjoying this year, your second year as part of Alabama's baseball program?
Roll Tide. I love it this year. It's a really good experience so far.
Really has been a lot of great wins for the Crimson Tide to start the season. Did you feel like a good start was coming for this group based on the hard work you did in the fall?
Absolutely. I think this fall we really learned who we were as a team, which I think last year we did that as well, but this year had a little different feel to it, and I think it's really been paying off early in the season.
Certainly has, as Alabama was able to get off to a good start, starting with the Bradley series. How much fun was the Jacksonville trip, getting those 3 wins, especially the comeback win against Ohio State?
Yeah, the Jacksonville trip was kind of our first test. I don't want to say our first test. Obviously, all games are tests, but we played 3 pretty big teams, big name teams in that series, and we took care of business on all of them. So it was kind of a good start for us moving into SEC play.
Yeah, you're down 10-0 against Ohio State in that Sunday ball game. What was the message Coach Vaughn gave you guys in the dugout?
Don't think about it as 10-0. Just get 1 run and pass the bat to the next guy. And that's just what we kept doing. And when you look up and the score's pretty close, then we won it.
Certainly did. So, again, some good moments for the Crimson Tide all throughout this non-conference play, that first month of the year, getting ready for SEC play. And you started to see your name pop up in the lineup a little bit more, had 3 hits against UAB the Tuesday prior to the A&M series. Did you have a feeling you'd be catching a little more against Texas A&M?
I did. We had talked about it a little bit through the week, and just that UAB game really, I think, kickstarted me and my confidence too, because, getting 3, that's not a bad UAB team whatsoever. And, they played pretty close, and I felt like the competition was pretty good. And being able to get 3 hits in that situation, I felt pretty good. So moving into A&M, I had a lot of confidence that I was going to be in there.
Does that show the importance of midweek games? I think fans can kind of take those for granted sometimes, but for you as players, that can be momentum swinger one way or the other towards the weekend.
Absolutely. I think midweek games are, if you want to call them trap games, any other names for that. But like last night, North Alabama, they played us pretty close for a while, and thankfully we had Justin LeBron to get the job done. But definitely midweek games are definitely you need to focus on them.
Yeah, and we've seen that all throughout the year. Alabama hasn't dropped one so far, and I imagine that's a point of pride for you guys.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Well, for that Texas A&M series, again, Alabama gets wins, picking up the Friday victory late in that ball game, Saturday late as well with Will Hodo's grand slam, and then you started the scoring on Sunday in what had been a scoreless game and a really well-pitched game. What do you remember about your RBI double that gave Alabama the lead?
Yeah, that Sunday game, it kind of felt like a blur once we got on the bus, but that was a big spot for me, and I told Cade Snell the at-bat before, he was on second, he hit a double, and I flew out. I told him in the dugout right before his at-bat, get on second again, I'm not going to mess this up. So it felt good to actually get that done. And then obviously he comes up and hits a pump, so it was pretty cool too.
Yeah, do you like the way he's swinging the bat right now?
I love it. He deserves everything he's getting right now. It's one of the hardest workers I know, and it couldn't happen to a better human.
Yeah, and he's the captain for this team. He gets to wear that jersey number 3. What'd you see from him in the fall that you and your teammates voted on him to be the captain?
Yeah, Cade's a guy that is wearing number 3, not because of just he's the captain on the field, but that's a guy that everyone looks to. If you need advice, if you need outside of the field advice, Cade's your guy to go to, and he's just been the best guy fit for that number 3 this year.
As we continue talking about this season, you get the sweep against Texas A&M. You roll home to take on number 1 ranked Tennessee, and for you, not only some hits in that series, but also throwing out a key base runner at second base. How much do you take pride in your defense?
Especially at this level, I think that catching is very what word do I want to use? Overlooked, the defensive part. I feel like, especially being able to do that in the 9th inning, that was a big play for me. Like, in my head after the game, I was like, wow, like that really just kind of saved the game. But they hadn't ran all night, and I knew that, they're down 1 in the 9th. They're definitely going to try to get something going with their best runner on first. So it was a good opportunity and got him.
So you're ready for that moment, and then just how good was that feeling once you release the ball, the throw, and then you see the tag and everything that happened?
It was really good. When they went to review, there was a little thought in the back of my head. I was like, come on, please don't be safe. But, after they called him out, it was a really good feeling.
Certainly was. The Crimson Tide winning that first game against Tennessee as we've been looking back at this season, and now you're getting ready to be back at the Joe once again this weekend against Oklahoma. What kind of home field atmosphere have you seen the fans create, especially this past weekend against the Bulls?
Absolutely. I think that this past weekend, obviously versus Tennessee, it was crazy. I've never seen the Joe like that, but I feel like that's going to be the standard here for a while at Alabama, and I feel like this program is on the way up, and I feel like that's just a glimpse of what's to come for this program.
Well, that's where we are right now. Let's take it all the way back to you. Tell us where you're from originally. Where'd you grow up?
From Springfield, Illinois.
And then what was the spark for you to get into baseball?
To be honest, I'd played a bunch of sports growing up, basketball, football. I didn't get the same spark from football or basketball, and I started playing baseball in high school, and obviously Springfield, Illinois isn't exactly a hot spot for recruiting, but started playing travel ball around 14, and I started playing travel ball down south because I knew that, like, this is the best baseball down here. This is where I want to play. But yeah, so when I started playing travel ball, like I said, it's not a hot spot for recruiting up there, but being down here, it really just changed everything for me and opened my eyes to the actual baseball talent in the Southeast.
Anybody remember on either your team or you played against, so you run into an SEC baseball?
I really haven't yet. Or actually, Torres. I mean, we played in the same, I guess, tournament in Jupiter going into our senior year, so that was kind of cool to meet back up with him here.
That's really good. Were you always a catcher from the start, or some other positions for you?
So I had caught when I was younger, and then I kind of took a break. Just didn't love catching from probably 7th through freshman year, and then I started catching again my sophomore year on from that.
What did you play during your break?
Third base, and I actually pitched a lot too.
Okay, so you got to have a strong arm to catch, so that definitely helps out, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And does it help it too when you're talking with the pitchers about what they're going through on the mound? You have some frame of reference about how it is to pitch?
Yeah, also catching takes a tremendous amount of feel with your pitchers because I got to be able to read their emotions. I want to know what they want to throw, what they feel good with, and I feel like being on both sides of that, I have a pretty good feel for it.
That's certainly good as well. So for you, started getting on the travel ball circuit, again, playing down south.
Mm-hmm.
Were you hoping to get an offer from an SEC school playing in the SEC? Was that a goal for you?
Yeah, that was definitely my number one goal. And, basically my recruiting story, like I didn't get that offer until 2 or 3 weeks going into freshman year of college. So the previous school I was at was Ole Miss. They had offered me July 4th, I think, going into my freshman year. And obviously came over to the right side and love Alabama.
Well, that's pretty late to sign. I mean, was that an uncomfortable
Absolutely.
period, kind of not knowing where you're going? And people think about it the next year, but it's really just a couple months, month and a half, and you got to be in school.
No, absolutely. I was going to a junior college before that, and it just kind of the opportunity opened up at the right time, and it just kind of happened. But no, it was definitely a nerve-wracking time.
I bet. What was that transition like once you finally got to Oxford? That was a team that just won the national championship.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of buzz going around Oxford, like when we came in, but it's nothing that you don't want to happen. That's why you go to places in the SEC.
What was it like being a teammate with TJ McCants? First there, and then both of you get to make the transition to Alabama at the same time.
Me and TJ, we really weren't close at all at Ole Miss. I was a freshman, he was a junior, and we just never really crossed paths that much except in the locker room. But I actually lived with him last year, so we actually got to get pretty close. So love TJ.
That's really good. So let's talk about that transition from Ole Miss to Alabama. What made this the right place for you?
It really started with the first phone call with Coach Morrison. It was unlike any phone call I've ever had with a coach. Like, that guy is the man. He was super, super, super nice to me and really wanted to know about my family. And, he's just made this place feel like home for me, as well as all the coaching staff.
We heard that from Brendan Norton, too, that Coach Morrison just talks to you guys kind of at your level. What does that mean?
He can relate to us. And I think that's big, especially like in today's world where it feels like everything's disconnected between generations, I guess. But no, he really connects with us and he's on the same page as us.
Well, that's certainly important to have. So you were able to have that connection. Did you make a campus visit before you made your decision?
I did not. I was playing summer ball up in Albany, New York, and I needed a couple phone calls, one with Coach Morrison, one with Coach Vaughn. I knew that this was home.
What's it out to you about Coach Vaughn first time you talked to him?
It was kind of the same thing. We had a couple phone calls actually, and one thing I loved about I didn't know them at the time, and I obviously didn't know if I could trust them, just like any other thing ever. But he's the most honest coach I've ever talked to, and he laid it all out for me. And I decided to come here, and I've never looked back. It's been the best decision of my life.
And I imagine part of that honesty was telling you, all right, we have Matt Cassetti that's coming back after he caught all last year, that great run Alabama had to a super regional. Freshman and Luke Vaughn catching as well. Cam Guangarena mixed in there along with you. What did he tell you about playing time and if you could be on the field in 2024?
Yeah, that was the one kind of question mark because even I didn't know. And, going into that, I was mature enough to know that, I don't think I'm ready to take on that role this year, but I would love to develop at a place like this for this year. And I think that was really important in my baseball journey, that I was able to develop for a year and still get that experience kind of being behind people like Mac. And yeah, I think it's paid off.
Yeah, it really has with the performances you've had this year. So what would be your everyday duties then as a player last year, knowing you weren't going to play but still had to impact the club in a positive way?
Yeah, I was still in the dugout bringing as much energy as I could. And, I think a lot of the reason why these pitchers, I hope, can trust me is because I'm down in the bullpen with them most of the game, and I'm building relationships with these pitchers that are coming back, and catching them every day, and I feel like that's just a big part. You need to be able to have some experience with your pitchers.
What's the atmosphere like in the bullpen, especially like say on the road when you guys are traveling around the SEC? Do you keep it pretty loose early on? Does it get tense? How do you guys keep the atmosphere out there?
No, I think it's loose 24/7. We aren't really buying into what the crowd's saying, and all that is just to get under the skin. So our guys do a pretty good job of blocking all that out.
Where's the place you felt like you got heckled the most?
Probably say Mississippi State, because that bullpen is like right there next to you. Actually, could be Southern Miss too. Southern Miss had a pretty rowdy student section.
Yeah, those two very passionate baseball fan bases. So you got to work with all those guys a year ago, and do you really appreciate the jump some of them have taken to being in some really now high leverage situations that maybe were in midweeks last year or had up and down appearances?
Absolutely. The guy that pops in my mind is Bobby Alcock. Like, you look at him last year, he had an injury, and thing about him, he was trying to come back. I don't know if he was injured or not at the time, but he was pitching through stuff, trying so hard to get back on the field, and ultimately he ended up getting hurt pretty bad. But you look at this year, and he's came back, and it's just been a full 180. He looks awesome.
He really has been good, especially that Sunday game we talked about with Texas A&M. 7 scoreless innings. Let's stick with him for a moment. What worked well for him on the mound that day? Yeah,
it's really rare on the mound when you have pretty much every single pitch working. Some days you're not going to have your changeup, you're not going to have your slider, but it was like on command. We're going fastballs away, sliders in, sliders backdoor, changeups away. It's just really fun to work with a pitcher on the mound like that when they can do that.
And early on when we saw you, we'd see kind of Brady Neal catch the Friday game, the Sunday game, but that meant you were catching on Saturday and you were getting to catch Riley Quick as he made his comeback from Tommy John surgery. Is it fun to catch Riley Quick, or is it a bit terrifying with how good that fastball can come in?
No, I think it's super fun. Riley's my guy, and I have so much trust and respect for him that it's always a fun time to be back there when Riley's throwing because I want to work hard for Riley and he wants to work hard for me.
His velocity tops on the stat. Does it just feel different catching him?
Yeah, definitely. There's a little extra zip to it. It feels like a bowling ball because he's throwing those sinkers too. But, it's really fun to catch him because you know that he's going to give hitters fits.
And also, how good is that slider now in his changeup?
Yeah, so he had developed, another slider, and he calls it the sweeper now. And his slider already was like 88, and this one's like 85, 87. But it moves like no pitch I've ever seen before in my life. It's awesome.
So he starts with great stuff, and Coach Vaughn's talked about the passion he has too and trying to channel that the right way. How do you see that with him on the mound?
Yeah, you can feel it. When he takes the mound, you know that it's business, and he's never taken a pitch off. And, it's super important because you take a pitch off in this league and the ball goes over the fence. So it's really good to see Riley being locked in every time he's on the mound.
Well, let's continue with the starting pitchers, Zane Adams. So what do you see out of him his sophomore year?
Yeah, I think he's made huge strides, especially just from last year. His stuff's ticked up. He's added new pitches. He's gotten bigger. He looks like the guy that we need throwing on Friday nights, and I think that's an awesome step for him.
Coach has also talked about out of the bullpen, Alabama's got a lot of different looks now, whether it's Heiberger coming in from the left side, Braylon Myers with what he does, and then Carson Osmer kind of hunched over that sidearm angle. Do you have to get a little bit used to seeing that different arm slot from him?
A little bit, yeah, but again, that's a guy that you have the utmost trust in on the mound, and he puts the ball where he wants it. So it's really fun to catch him as well. And
I imagine on the other side, you guys have to hit against these pitchers in the fall or in preseason. It's tough to hit against this bullpen, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You can ask any hitter on this roster. It's pretty tough to hit off our guys.
It really is. So with all the pitchers, how good of a relationship do you have to have with Jason Jackson?
Awesome. Really good relationship. Last year especially, it was kind of weird, getting to know everyone coming in. But JJ has been awesome to me, and I really, really respect him for what he does with those pitchers down in the bullpen because that's not easy. And, I got to see it every day last year being down in the bullpen a lot. But, I think he's an awesome coach and awesome human.
And, of course, he's in your ear literally in the entire ball game. What can you tell us about the things you hear in that IFB unit and then how you guys get on the same page with the pitch comm?
Yeah, the things he says in my ear, it's like just to make sure that we're on the same page. And it's like he can see things before it happens. Like if it's a slider away and he's saying get out there a little bit, it's because that slider is literally going to be exactly where he says. And I think that's pretty cool. But the pitch comm, basically, it's like a Apple Watch, and he'll click a button and it'll come up fastball, slider, changeup, whatever on my wrist. And, that's the easiest way to do it nowadays with all the technology that's happening.
Yeah, have you enjoyed that part of it, all the technology you guys get to use?
Yeah, I do like it. I think it completely takes away, like, getting the pitches from second base when you're using finger signs or whatever. But, no, the technology's been a big step, and it's kind of weird to adjust to, especially, like, because I'd never used it before in a game, but I'm getting the hang of it now.
Yeah, you certainly are. Crimson Tide, again, off to a great start. We've heard about the clubhouse chemistry really good on this team, and I imagine you're a huge part of it as the de facto team barber. What can you tell us about some of the haircuts you've been giving to your teammates so they can see? Our fans can see it faded.by.p on Instagram.
Yep. I started cutting hair last year actually for the team, but let me tell you, they weren't good enough to post last year. I had a lot of test dummies that were really really good people for letting me do that to them last year.
What got you interested in that?
To be honest, I just watch YouTube videos about haircuts. Like, it's kind of always interested me, and I always like to, make sure my hair looks fine in haircuts. So I want to make sure other people's hair looks fine. That's really all it is.
So mostly fades with the guys?
Yeah, mostly. I can't use scissors. It's all fades.
That's good. So mostly fades, even though you don't rock one yourself.
Right. Yeah. I keep my hair long, but maybe someday I'll cut it all off, but not right now.
That's pretty funny. What else can we know about you away from the field? What else are you interested in?
I really just like hanging out with the team, bonding. Anytime I'm not at the field with them, I'm at someone's house and we're all hanging out. I really like to hunt and fish my off time. But But yeah, I mean, I'm a huge team guy, and anytime that I have to hang out with these guys on the team, it doesn't matter who it is, I'm hanging out with them.
College baseball is really special in that way, and I imagine summer ball as well. What can you tell us about where you've played summer ball and those experiences?
Yeah, so my first year, I had a short stint in the Prospect League back in Springfield where I live. But my second year, I went to Albany, New York, in the PGCBL, and that was kind of my first time really being far from home, and it definitely took some getting used to. But about halfway through, my family was moving to Texas, so I had to come home and figure all that out. But this past summer, I was in the Northwoods, and I stayed there June through August. And, sticking out a whole summer in the Northwoods is a pretty tough task, but it changed my life and it changed me as a player. And I really liked the Northwoods and what it did for me.
What town were you in?
In Kenosha, Wisconsin. It's right above Chicago, about 45 minutes.
Okay, that's really good. Any teammates our fans would recognize from that group?
Yeah, I mean, my host family, they were huge for me. Also, my roommate, Tsubasa Tomi, he was a pitcher from Japan that pitched in the Little League World Series for Team Japan when they had won it all. I forgot what year, but he was a starting pitcher. That was a really cool experience to get close with him.
That's really good to hear about. Well, now you're playing with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Again, we're getting ready for a huge weekend coming up against Oklahoma. What can you tell our fans about what they should expect from this baseball team moving forward?
Yeah, this team this weekend left a bad taste in our mouth, obviously. It should. And we're ready. We got back on track last night, got back in the win column, but that's not enough. We want to get out there and we want to hurt someone's feelings.
We look forward to that. Well, Will Plattner, very well said. Thank you so much for the time you've given us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. All the best against Oklahoma and the rest of the way. We look forward to chatting again soon. Thank you, Roll Tide.
Thank you, Roll Tide.
Iron made this place. But in order to take it all home, you need nerves of steel. The big one is back. Get your tickets now at TalladegaSuperspeedway.com.
Well, here on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR the last few weeks, we've really detailed the story of Christy Curry and this Alabama women's basketball team. One of the best finishes we've seen in SEC play for the Crimson Tide in recent years, earning a number 5 seed for the NCAA tournament, highest that Alabama has earned since the 1990s. And over the course of this past weekend, Alabama picked up a win against Green Bay in the first round of the tournament at College Park, Maryland. That meant in the second round they would have to play the Terps on their home floor, the Maryland Terrapins, and it turned out to be a tremendous ball game, tied at 83 through the first 4 quarters of play, an overtime period that featured Sarah Ashley Barker hitting those 3 critical free throws to force second overtime, and unfortunately Maryland outscored Alabama by 3 points in the second overtime period to get the win. Tough loss for the Crimson Tide. Certainly we're hoping to get back to Birmingham tomorrow for the Sweet 16, but the season comes to a close in the round of 32. After the ball game was over, a very emotional press conference in College Park. You'll hear from not only Christy Curry as well as Sarah Ashley Barker in our coach's checklist from women's basketball after Alabama against Maryland in a thriller on Monday night.
I think I have the words right now. They believed when a lot of people didn't. I think we had been to a couple tournaments. COVID came about, we would have been. And so now, it would be 5 out of 5. And they just have continued the legacy. I think she mentioned Hannah and Brittany and Jasmine and all those kids that have come before. And, they're just incredibly special people. Guys, they're everything that's good. And, we talk about grit, we talk about love, we talk about gratitude, the classroom, court, and the community. They represent their families in the University of Alabama the way it should be. And I just wish I could have done something a little bit different down the stretch to help us get just one step further, because they truly are, the hardest working group and high character. And I just feel like, I could have done something different to help them down the stretch.
The first thing that I did is I walked over to Carly Weathers and I said, pray for me, because that's the Lord is who I look to for my strength, my peace. He upholds me. On my wrist, I write Isaiah 41:10, and it says, I will strengthen you, I will help you, and I will uphold you. And regardless if I would have made all 3 or not all 3, he would have still been my rock, and he still would have held my head high. And I knew that, and that's what Carly's words said during my prayers. It was just, Lord, show her that if she makes these 3, it's your glory. If she misses these 3, that's how her story was written through you, and that's how you wanted it to be. And so that's how I went up, stepping up on every single free throw was how lucky I am that the Lord has put me in that position to even do that. And that's kind of all that. That's exactly what I went to, was who my strength is, and that's my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I think I'll remember the relationships that I've built, and that's why I'm so emotional, because it doesn't matter about the wins, the losses, how many points you score, what you get on all SEC teams. Like, it doesn't matter. It's about the people in that locker room that are by your side every single day. And every single one of them has just lifted me to the highest. When I'm down, they pick me up. When someone else is down, I pick them up. And I think that we just have such a bond that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. And I'm a firm believer, like, your teammates are your sisters for the rest of your life. They're my best friends. I love every single one of them. I'm so proud of them. I wish I could have done a little bit more to send us to the Sweet 16 for them, just because I feel like we deserve that. And I just think that just what Coach Christie and her staff has done for me in this program, I'm just so grateful that I've been a part of it, and I couldn't have asked for it to end any other way, just because we stayed together tonight, and that's all we've been trying to do all season. And I love every single person in that locker room, and it's more emotional just that I won't be able to play or be coached by Coach Christie ever again with some of the people in that locker room. So.
Hey, I'm Chris Youngblood, and you're watching Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR.
There is nothing like Sweet Home Talladega. Don't miss out on NASCAR's return to Talladega Superspeedway on April 27th for the Jack Links 500. This is more than racing. This is Talladega. Purchase your tickets today at TalladegaSuperspeedway.com. Tough end of the season for Crimson Tide women's basketball, but again, so much to be proud of for Alabama fans with the way Christy Curry, Sarah Ashley Barker represented Alabama on Monday, and the way this team performed all throughout the season. Women's basketball may be done, but men's basketball not done yet. The Sweet 16 coming up later tonight, and that leads off our upcoming schedule here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Later this evening, 5 o'clock will be the start time for Chris Stewart, Tom Stipe, and Brian Passink all across the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Alabama against BYU. Then tomorrow, we're going to be busy on campus. 6 p.m. first pitch for both baseball and softball. The Crimson Tide against the Sooners at Sewell Thomas Stadium, and then the softball team against the Georgia Lady Bulldogs coming up at the Rhodes House. And then on Saturday, we hope it's a very busy day. We would like for Alabama men's basketball, of course, to be in the Elite Eight, time to be announced against either Duke or Arizona. We do know that the baseball team will have an earlier start coming up at noon, coming up on Saturday. The softball team at 2 o'clock against Georgia. And then those series will come to a close with softball having the early start on Sunday at 11 a.m., baseball at 1 p.m. against Oklahoma. Do want to note as well, we will have a booth cam presented by MLB The Show 25 coming up for all of our baseball games, streaming live on all of our CTSN social media platforms, just like the show you're watching right now. So make sure you join us coming up for that over the weekend. And of course, March will wrap up with Hey Coach coming up on Monday night. Hopefully Nate Oates will bring that regional trophy back to Baumhauer's and put it on stage, the Final Four trophy, like he did a year ago, getting ready for the Final Four. Follow us for everything coming up on Crimson Tide Athletics at UA_CTSN on all social media platforms. That's going to wrap up this very busy Thursday edition Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR. Huge thank you to our guest, Richard Hendrix, joining us for Hoops with Hendrix. Again, if Alabama's in the Final Four, he'll be back with us coming up next week. Will Plattner from the Crimson Tide baseball team. We appreciate his interview at the Advantage Center. Thanks to Lexi Graber from our NIL office for setting that up. And, of course, Coach's Checklist, the comments of Sarah Ashley Barker and Christy Curry after the women's basketball game. Thanks to Ethan Carabin. He put all this show together. He'll also be producing our booth cam for baseball all weekend long, presented by MLB The Show, so we appreciate his hard work. And for everybody with the Crimson Tide Sports Network, I'm Roger Hoover saying thank you for watching another edition of Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR. Let's hope it's a winning weekend for the Crimson Tide in basketball, baseball, and softball, and we'll see you again next week. Roll Tide, everyone.